what I'm going to talk about right now is the Screenflow 10 interface and give a basic overview of how it works. What we have right here is I have just captured a tutorial with Screenflow, captured the screen and my image on my camera. And after I stop the record, it opens up automatically. And it opens up actually with the library selected. So you see the two assets it has brought in, and they're in the timeline already. Now I want to back up a little bit and show what I can't capture in that video, and that is how to configure it before you actually record, so it records the sources that you want it to record. And before I do that, I just want to say that I'm an expert in probably what is the world's most advanced video editing software, but I don't use that to do this. That would be like ridiculous overkill. This is made specifically for capturing screens and working with screens. It's tailored to that. It does it really exceptionally well and intuitively, and I love it. I mean, it's a great program. So I can't say enough about it. But so configuring it, if you go up here to the little video camera here and go to configure recording, you set up what you want it to capture. So the first one is the screen that is capturing, and I have two screens, the one on my laptop and the one that's attached to my computer, and it will outline it in red like you see to make sure that you're selecting the one that you think you're selecting. And then this one is I'm capturing the video camera, the external video camera I have, but you can capture all these things, these choices you have. Here is my sound. It is Shure Digital, the microphone that I am sitting in front of down here. And then I'm telling it to capture the computer audio. Not that I'm going to need it for this because I'm just going to be doing a Photoshop tutorial, which doesn't really have audio. But if I were doing a demonstration of video editing or sound mixing or something, that would be quite handy. You have to, it isn't there by default, you have to click the button to add it, and then you'll be prompted to install a driver to allow that. And of course, you have to go through the Apple security, accept permissions. If you're trying to install this on a school computer, you might have to have an IT person authorize that installation. But once it's there, you can select it, you make sure that the checkboxes are there, you hit the red button, and it counts down from 5 until it starts to record. And then the interface goes away and you just have a computer screen where you're working, and it is recording it all in the background. So I'm going to close this because I obviously don't want to capture it again. But what we're looking at now is I'm currently capturing this just using QuickTime screen capture to record the screen so I can show you this interface without using Screenflow again to capture a Screenflow interface. So, and then what I might do is bring that file into Screenflow and edit it a little bit. So let's go back to what I was saying in that the library here, the assets come in. Anything else that you want to bring in, you can drag and drop in here. Previous recordings, images, photos, whatever that you want to use, sound, you can bring right into the library and then down into the timeline. So let's take a look at the timeline, and then I'm going to go through the various tabs up here very quickly just to give you an overview of why I like this and why you might want to use this. So what we have down here is, and I've messed with this a little bit and undone it, so there's normally not a gap here to begin with, but here is my camera, and here is my background. If I select them, they highlight. So this is just the screen that we captured, the desktop currently, and my computer. So the first thing that I do is I right-click and I detach the audio from the video because the microphone is going through its own cable and it's coming to the computer separately than the video is being captured from the camera. And so since they're not coming from the same source but being joined together in the computer, they're not exactly aligned. So I typically have to take the audio and scoot it down a little bit. It comes in a little too soon. So it's what we call out of sync with the lips. So I zoom in a little bit, and as I move this audio to the right, you'll see at the far right of the screen that little green number appears, and I scoot it over to about 3, from trial and error, I've seen that seems to do the trick. So if I were grabbing both simultaneously from the same source over the same cable, that probably wouldn't be an issue. So now I want to talk about this video right here and what I can do with it, because I typically am demonstrating software. I have to move myself around a bit to avoid covering up certain parts of the frame. So I will show you a feature in this that allows you to manipulate that. So they're called actions. So I go over here to my video tab, and I can set this action. I'll say, for example, I wanted to start off, since my screen doesn't already have a, I want to reset something real quick. So my screen, I had done some stuff prior. My screen doesn't have a software up on it right now. So I might want to come to it and have it already be large, because it comes up that small size. So maybe I want to start off and I'm this size. And then as I launch the software in the background, I might want to time it so that I shrink down at the same time. So I do what's called a video action, and this will come up to give you a little demonstration of how it works. And I say, okay, and it puts this little action in the timeline. And that action, think of it as like a transition. I can stretch its duration, and I put the playhead at the end of it, and I set the values that I want it to have at the end of that yellow bar. So I want to shrink down, and I want to move, say, over here. So now if I play it, boom, doop, I shrink down over here, and then I can go in and place this. Maybe I like it to happen more like right here. And I have the ability to move that around and stretch its duration on how long that transition happens. So that's just a video action. And it can be complex with rotating it and changing its position by the numbers and changing its opacity and all this stuff, cropping it. I have a lot of ability to manipulate that. I can give it a drop shadow, and I can tell it that I want that drop shadow offset a certain amount. You can get super cheesy with it and blur it a little bit. You can lose yourself in it. So be a little careful. So that's called a video action. Now, I want to then talk about, while I'm here in the timeline, before I move along in those tabs up there, I want to mention another feature that is foundational to Screenflow, but something you can't do in Zoom, and one reason you could be in something like Screenflow is the ability to edit. So this cursor playhead here has a little red tab at the bottom. When you click that red tab, you get to edit all the way through, and you're able to grab these and move them and trim them, and select them independently and trim them. So I might want to have a title that appears. I might end a certain lesson or something, and then I want a title that introduces the next lesson. So if I go over to titles, I can click on titles. I have two, they now call it text and title in 10 because they've added two types. I could add a fancy title or plain text. If I go into my fancy title, I will see I have all these choices of pre-built animated titles. That's cool. So let's pick one. Let's pick this one and say select, and then I can go in, I can change the font, I can change the colors and the size and all this. But let's say I like it. It goes here at a certain duration, and that is about 5 seconds. And I'm able to zoom in, you might have noticed, and zoom out here to manipulate this view. And say I want it to be more like 4 seconds. Hopefully it just changes the pace of the animation as it does to accommodate that duration. Introduces the new segment right here, and off we go. So that's the basic editing with a title. I often just use text, and the reason I'll use text is because often what I'm using text on the screen for is to correct myself. If I say something wrong, I can use text to say, whoops, sorry, mistake. I meant to say this, I should have said that. And I'll just do that with text. So I'm going to delete that. And then we'll talk about the other callouts and enhancements that we can do on the screen recording here. So we have our text. Another nice thing is being able to manipulate the mouse. I have that turned on, and I can scale that mouse, and then I could go turn on the click effect. So the click effect, if I find, I'm not even sure, you can't really tell what I'm clicking. So I can turn on the effect, which I use radar, and it defaults to 400 and a certain duration and zero blur. And you can go find where you've clicked, and it sends out this little, I should say big sort of radar blip that I kind of like, but maybe you want to walk it back a little bit because it is quite large. So there it is, half the size, which is nice, and it fades out. I always do this. I always increase the pointer size, and I always put a radar on it. The other thing I always do is I turn on show keystrokes. So show keystrokes allows you to have like a subtitle of any keyboard shortcuts, any typing that you do will show up. So I can find where I typed something, where I used a keyboard shortcut right there. I hit B for brush, and you'll notice that it brings up this really large banner, which is a bit much. So with that selected, I can go, and that's 98% of that screen, so I can usually bring that back down to something more reasonable, maybe about 20, and that will accommodate that action. You can also, oops, I didn't mean to click off of that, you can also change the size, change the position here. I don't know what F is, and you can show all keystrokes or just the modifier keys. I always turn that on as well. You can see that in action. And now I want to talk about, I want to use something in conjunction with a video action. It's called a call out. So a great thing about this is ability to do call outs. So let's say I want to call out this menu here. I can combine a video action and a call out. So I would go to my videos and I would say new action, and I click OK. And at the end of this action, I want this screen to scale up, and I want it to go over to here because I'm going to emphasize this part of the screen. And it'll stay like that. From that point on, it'll stay like that. I can determine how long I want that to take to zoom in there. It zooms into there. And then I go to add a call out. So I go to this circle with an arrow and I add a new call out. And you'll notice when I do the call out, it adds another thing. They can overlap. It defaults to a mouse call out, which is going to be highlighting my mouse, which is right there. Or I can do a freehand type call out where I can select a circle or a square. I will select a square and I'm going to highlight just this pad because that's what I want to emphasize. So everything else goes dim. This is highlighted consequently, this area. I can change the opacity of that background. I can blur, I can decide if I want to blur this or blur the background. I don't need to zoom up, but what I can do, I don't think I can do you don't do a border on this one. You do a border on a mouse one that makes the circle a different size, and you can add an outline to it. But here, I can just have that call out there. And then it can stay there. And then I can take and make another action that will this call out, you can fade it up over a certain amount of time and fade it out over a certain amount of time. So now that's 0.8 of a second. So this will zoom up, that will fade in, it'll last there, it'll fade out, but I want to time my fade out with my next action in my video. So the next action in my video, with that video selected, is to go back down to where I was. So I want to go back to 100%, move it back over here, get it lined up, and now you'll see this. I can move it so it times out, give it a little duration, and now I have this. So it goes highlight, lasts there while I'm talking, goes away. So that ability to quickly do these call outs to emphasize either the mouse or something that you draw, which you can do with this freehand type call out. A freehand call out would be you draw a circle and you can do it like that. The square one is the one I just showed, and the mouse will just be a circle around wherever your mouse happens to be. So those are great. Delete that one. And then the touch callouts are not something you'd really use unless you were demonstrating, like you had an image of a cell phone face and you wanted to demonstrate how a finger might move across it. So I don't really use those. We talked about titles. The other thing I want to talk about is annotations. So annotations allow you to quickly draw on the screen, choose your color, choose what you want to draw. If I want to draw a line, I add an action. It's right here. I can take that line. I can draw this line. I can add what I want the ends to be like. And I can draw squares, all these shapes and freeform stuff, and choose its color and thickness and opacity and everything. So this can really emphasize something that you want students to see. like look at this. So this stuff really comes in handy when demonstrating, obviously, software, but you don't need to have software like Photoshop or an editing program there. You could also have a PowerPoint that you're giving and have yourself there. You can obviously build that in PowerPoint, but it might be a little bit more easier. It might be easier to annotate it and manipulate it in Screenflow. And in a future tutorial, I'll talk about using Screenflow in conjunction with OBS to record PowerPoint lectures. So I think one last thing before we go, just want to mention sound. So sound right here, the sound is, you have the ability to control its level. So when you're doing sound, you want to make sure you have a good level, that it's peaking right around here. You can adjust that accordingly. Also, you have the ability to remove any background noise in the sound that you don't want, traffic noise or whatever, and it does a pretty good job of doing that, and you can adjust the amount. So once you have everything configured the way you want and you think you're done, then the one last step is to export it. So you go to File and you export it, and when you're exporting it, the main thing you want to be considering is the resolution. So this obviously would be tied to the resolution of your screen, but I would just go to 100% of original and let it maintain all of that detail, and then render that out and upload that to Kaltura and let Kaltura decide how to down-res it for streaming. You might as well capture as much detail as you can and then provide that. And then depending on how long your show is, you'll notice that this is a minute something here, minute and a half maybe, and it's 72 megs. But depending on how long your show is, this render could take anywhere from 5 minutes to 55 minutes. I can have some very long renders because I do sometimes an hour and a half tutorials on something. So just plan accordingly. But that's all I really change, and I leave that on normal, and I just render it out and export that, or upload that rather, to Kaltura. So I'm going to cancel that. And that is my brief overview of Screenflow. It is only available for the Mac, unfortunately. The PC people have to look for an alternative such as Camtasia. I have used it, but it has been very long, so I'm not sure about the similarities, but I would imagine it has a lot of the same features, common features like callouts and stuff like that, and working with a timeline. But anyway, I think Screenflow does a great job for what it is designed to do, and I use it multiple times a week. I would almost say almost every day, but multiple times a week I use this application. So I've really come to have become quite fond of it, and I think it does a really great job.